Imagine walking into a large, crowded venue, a busy shopping mall on a Saturday afternoon, a packed concert, or a congested downtown street. Before you even interact with a single person, you feel a distinct physical shift. Your chest tightens slightly, your energy plummets. You scan the room, and your first subconscious thought isn't, "Look at all these people." Your first thought is, "Where is the exit?" Society loves to misdiagnose this exact feeling. They call you antisocial. They assume you have social anxiety or agoraphobia, or that you are just a grumpy introvert who hates having fun. But if you are someone who actively avoids crowds, not because you are terrified of them, but because they physically exhaust you, welcome. You're about to feel deeply understood. Today, we are breaking down the exact psychology of why some adults despise crowds. And it has absolutely nothing to do with fear. It has everything to do with how your nervous system is wired. To understand why a crowded room makes you want to immediately turn around and go home, we first have to look at the raw data your brain is being forced to handle. Most people walk through a crowded room with a built-in psychological filter. Their nervous system automatically blurs out the background noise. They don't hear the overlapping conversations. They don't notice the flickering fluorescent lights. They just focus on the person right in front of them and happily ride the chaotic energy of the room. But your brain operates without that filter. In the late 1990s, clinical psychologists Dr. Elaine Aron and Dr. Arthur Aron introduced a concept called sensory processing sensitivity. They discovered that roughly 15 to 20% of the population is born with a nervous system that processes environmental stimuli at a remarkably deep, intense level. If you possess this trait, a crowd isn't just a group of people. It is a massive, aggressive wave of sensory data. When you step into a busy airport or a packed stadium, you are absorbing everything simultaneously. You hear the announcements over the loudspeaker. You feel the bass of the background music vibrating in the floor. You notice the erratic movement of the person walking 10 feet ahead of you. You absorb the collective, stressed emotional temperature of the room. It is the cognitive equivalent of trying to drink from a fire hose. Extroverted, neurotypical individuals use the friction of a crowd to charge their batteries. But your highly sensitive nervous system has a remarkably low threshold for stimulation. You don't dislike the crowd because you dislike the people in it. You dislike the crowd because your biological hardware is overheating. Your brain is dedicating an astronomical amount of computing power just to process the sheer volume of existence happening around you. This is why, after an hour in a crowded space, you don't just feel tired. You feel utterly, bone-deep depleted. You need a dark, quiet room just to cool the engine down. But the sheer exhaustion of processing the noise is only half the story. There is a deeper, almost primal reason crowds make your skin crawl. It comes down to a fascinating field of study called proxemics. In the 1960s, a cultural anthropologist named Edward T. Hall made a groundbreaking discovery about human behavior. He realized that every single human being walks around inside an invisible spatial bubble. Hall mapped out these territorial zones. He identified the intimate zone, which extends about 18 inches from your body, reserved strictly for romantic partners and close family. Then there is the personal zone, stretching out to about 4 feet, where good friends are allowed to exist. In a normal environment, you have absolute control over who gets to cross those invisible lines. But a crowd violently strips that control away from you. When you are squeezed onto a subway car or packed into a tight hallway at an event, strangers are forced directly into your intimate and personal zones. To the average person, this is slightly annoying, but to a deeply observant, sensitive adult, it is a psychological breach. Your brain's threat detection system, the amygdala, is suddenly forced to work overtime. Even if you consciously know you are perfectly safe, your primitive brain does not. It registers the physical proximity of strangers as a low-level, constant boundary violation. You are surrounded by unpredictable variables. Will that person bump into me? Will they spill their drink? Why are they standing so close? This state of hypervigilance requires an immense amount of psychological tension. You are essentially holding your breath, mentally bracing for impact, for the entire time you are in the crowd. It is no wonder you feel a massive wave of physical relief the second you step out the front doors and the spatial bubble around you finally expands back to normal. Then, there is another psychological layer to this that is rarely talked about. It involves how your brain perceives the identity of the crowd itself. In 1895, a French psychologist named Gustave Le Bon wrote a foundational book called The Crowd, a study of the popular mind. He observed that when individuals gather in massive numbers, they undergo a strange psychological transformation. The individual, conscious personality vanishes. The crowd becomes a single, unified entity driven by raw, primitive emotion. Psychologists call this de-individuation. In a crowd, people lose their sense of personal responsibility. They become louder, more impulsive, and more aggressive than they would ever be on their own. They move like a school of fish, reacting blindly to whatever is happening around them. If you are a highly observant, deeply independent adult, watching this transformation happen in real time is instinctively repulsive. You value self-control. You value logic. You value being deliberate with your actions. Being swept up in a crowd forces you to surrender your autonomy to the herd. You are physically trapped in a massive organism that operates purely on impulse. You can't walk at your own pace. You can't stop when you want to stop. Your physical movements are dictated by the thousand strangers pressing in around you. For someone who guards their independence fiercely, this isn't just a minor inconvenience. It feels like a temporary loss of freedom. There is also a distinctly generational piece to this puzzle, especially if you grew up before smartphones and constant digital connectivity. If you were raised in the analog era, your baseline for a normal environment was inherently quieter. You remember what it felt like to exist in a world with empty space. Today, the modern world is designed to pack as many humans, as much noise, and as much commercial friction into every square inch of public space as legally possible. The world has gotten louder, but your tolerance for the noise has not changed. So the next time friends or family try to pressure you into going to a massive, chaotic event, and they make you feel guilty for saying no, remember this: you are not broken, you are not antisocial, and you are not afraid. You simply possess a deeply observant nervous system that refuses to be numbed. You require a high degree of control over your personal space, and you refuse to surrender your peace of mind to the chaotic, impulsive energy of the herd. You prefer the quiet, not because you are hiding from the world, but because it is the only place where you can actually hear yourself think. If this video just put words to a feeling you have carried your entire life, tell me in the comments. Let's see how many of us are actually out there. And if you want to understand the deeper psychology behind why your mind works the way it does, make sure to hit subscribe. The video on your screen right now dives into why you possess such a low threshold for stimulation and why that sensitivity is actually a profound advantage. Click it, and I'll see you there.